Variant 60% more transmissible and more resistant to vaccines. Latest figures show in some parts of the UK, new COVID cases have doubled in less than a week as ministers discuss delaying so-called Freedom Day. Also this lunchtime, the G7 summit in Cornwall as European leaders arrive today will post-Brexit trade rows threaten to overshadow the agenda. A British woman attacked by
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. Scientists say they believe the Delta variant first detected in India is spreading 60% faster than the UK variant. According to data released today, the number of cases is more than doubling every week in some parts of the country. It's fueling concerns about plans to lift all COVID restrictions in England in just 10 days' time. Ministers are thought to be considering putting back the so-called Freedom Day by up to 4 weeks. With the latest, here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
More than 40 million people in the United Kingdom have gone through this process, and with every jab we are, in theory, one step closer to freedom. However, with cases rising of the Delta variant, which originates in India, there are concerns about whether the June 21st deadline to ease all restrictions will happen. Sheila Gorhen has run the Prince George pub in Croydon for the last 20 years. She says any delay could be the final blow to her industry.
It has been the toughest thing I've ever been through. And it's getting to the stage, we have no money left. The grant hardly touched the sides. So it's getting down to the wire. So we really, really need the 21st to happen or restrictions to be lifted.
Ministers this morning said we would know the plans on Monday, but for now urged caution.
We have to watch very carefully. If you look at the past week, the increase in cases is 63%. Now, the good news is that vaccines are beginning to sever that link between infections, case rates and hospitalisation.
The concern comes from the rise of the Delta variant, which is 60% more transmissible than other variants. In the last week alone, there have been almost 30,000 new cases of it, which is 5 times more than the previous week. The recent spike means cases are now doubling on average every 4.5 to 11.5 days. Former Prime Minister says that we should consider treating those who have had the vaccine slightly differently.
If you do get into a situation where you're finding it difficult to keep to June 21st date, then look again at distinguishing between those people who are vaccinated and those people aren't, because it really makes no sense to treat the two groups as if they're the same.
Public health leaders have said they think the June 21st deadline should be delayed, and many scientists agree.
I can't see the argument for rushing to have a symbolic red letter day of unlocking when even 2 to 4 weeks of increased vaccination would buy us a lot of time.
With the deadline approaching, the government says it will look at the latest data before making any final decisions about what to do next. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
To the G7 in Cornwall now, where the summit is just about getting underway this lunchtime. This morning, Boris Johnson has been holding bilateral meetings with the leaders of Canada, Japan and Italy. Top of the agenda, the pandemic, leading the recovery from it and helping to vaccinate the world.
The UK is really stepping up to the plate, but so is everybody here at the G7. The Americans are making a big contribution, and we hope to be telling you more in the next couple of days about the overall G7 contribution, because there's no point in us just vaccinating the UK. We need to vaccinate the world.
Also arriving this morning, French President Emmanuel Macron and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Brexit and the issue of Northern Ireland, the so-called sausage wars, are also threatening to disrupt talks over the next few days. And our political editor, Robert Peston, is also at the talks. Robert, thanks for being here this lunchtime. Let's start with that vaccine announcement we just heard from the Prime Minister, didn't we? How significant is this?
So, as I've been saying for a few days, Boris Johnson wants the G7 to announce that 1 billion doses of the vaccine will be donated by these 7 rich countries to poorer countries. We've heard that the UK is donating 100 million of that, the US 500 million doses, and that is the big headline that they want. But I have to say it is just a start in terms of helping those poorer countries and indeed helping the world, because you've just heard this worrying news about how fast the so-called Delta virus is spreading in the UK. We're not going to be free from the threat of COVID and indeed of variants like the Delta variant until the whole world is free of COVID. And unfortunately, the process of vaccinating the world is way behind schedule because of the surge of the virus in India, which means that vaccines that were supposed to leave India and go to other poor countries have simply been kept in India. And the problem with this 1 billion of vaccines, a big number, is one, it's maybe 10% of what the world needs, and secondly, very little of it will go to poor countries in the next few weeks. Most of it won't go till the end of this year and early next year. So just to be clear, this is only a start in terms of making the world safe.
And Robert, the post-Brexit trade issue, in particular, of course, the Northern Ireland issue, how likely is that to disrupt talks?
Look, it's going to loom like a long Brexit shadow over these talks. The Prime Minister breathed a sigh of relief yesterday when the US President didn't cut up rough about the way in which European leaders think that that is Boris Johnson, is poised to break the Northern Ireland Protocol, which we signed only a few months ago. But it's been made clear by the French President that he's going to raise it. We've seen from a picture put out by the French President that European leaders are operating on this issue as a pack. So yes, this is a very thorny problem for the British Prime Minister.
All right, for now, it's going to be a busy weekend for you, isn't it, Robert? But thank you. Thank you very much. Well, outside the summit, protesters have been attempting to raise issues they care about, whether that can be providing vaccines to poorer countries or climate change. And our correspondent, Rupert Evelyn, is there with some of them, I believe. Rupert, what's happening so far?
That's right, as the G7 kicks off, so too do the protests. These are the Red Rebels. I'm told they've come here to bear witness to this event, a silent but peaceful protest in which they, like if anything is happening around the world where people are being killed and people they hold responsible are gathering, this is a sort of place where they come to say, we need to be heard, you need to react. There are protests happening not just here in St Ives today, but also in Falmouth. Extinction Rebellion are here. We've heard speeches from them. All the issues I think that you'd expect to be raised by the protesters, the type of issues that actually are also on the agenda for the G7 are being raised here today, from the environment to concerns over vaccine rollout worldwide, women's issues, all those types of things as well are wrapped up in what we expect the protests to do, not just today, but over the weekend as well. There's one little, I don't know if you can see that, but little lad there getting in on the act as well. It's all been good-natured so far. There is clearly a very big police presence, but so far to date here in St Ives and Carbis Bay, it's peaceful.
All right, Rupert, thank you very much, and apologies there for a slight break-up that you may have seen in your picture. Thank you. One issue that has already been raised by Boris Johnson with President Joe Biden is the case of Harry Dunn. The 19-year-old was killed when a car struck his motorbike outside an RAF base in Northamptonshire almost 2 years ago. The driver, Anne Tsoukalos, is the wife of a US intelligence agency worker. She flew back to the US days after the crash. The Crown Prosecution Service issued an extradition request, but Washington, then under the Trump administration, said she was covered by diplomatic immunity, meaning there can be no criminal prosecution. However, following these latest talks, Boris Johnson said President Biden was extremely sympathetic and actively engaged in the case. Well, joining me now is Harry Dunn's mother, Charlotte Charles. Charlotte, thank you for joining us this lunchtime. Can I just get your reaction, first of all, to what Boris Johnson said there about Joe Biden being sympathetic and actively engaged in the case? Do you feel more hopeful hearing that?
Yeah, of course we do. Absolutely we do. We were a little shocked and a little bit taken aback, to be honest. We had no forewarning that Harry was going to be raised. We didn't even really dare hope that Harry would be raised on the eve of G7, you know, with all of the world discussions going on. So it is heartening to hear that Harry has been discussed already. And we're very grateful to Prime Minister Johnson for raising it with President Biden, you know, at their very first meeting face to face. So, and Charlotte, yeah, we do have hope that things are moving.
Charlotte, you know, Joe Biden, of course, a new administration in the US, a new president, he has gone through a lot of loss himself, hasn't he? He's lost some very close family members. Do you think that adds a level of sensitivity, perhaps, towards your case?
I can't see how it couldn't, to be honest. You know, when you lose a child, it's not the natural order of things. You know, it never leaves you. It never, your heart's never, it's never going to heal properly. And, you know, even though he lost his daughter back in the early 70s and his wife, and then of course he lost another son just a few years ago, you know, there is no doubt in my mind that there is definitely a lot more sensitivity there in comparison to what we had with Mr. Trump.
And Charlotte, finally, ultimately, of course, this is a legal matter. There is a legal case that is going on. Where are you with the case at the moment? Where does it stand?
We're still working really, really hard behind the scenes. We're at our spokespersons having very much senior level dialogue with people both in Washington and in London. So we are peddling like crazy, as we have been for the last 22 months in our fight for justice. It's tiring. We've had to reach out for some help to give us some extra strength. We're leaning on each other very much, depending on each other within the family and close friends network to get us through this. But the determination to succeed and get that justice for Harry is still as strong as ever. So we're working really hard and we will get there.
Charlotte, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this lunchtime. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Still to come, as the Euros are finally prepared to kick off, we check in with all the home nations. And when Kate met Jill, the Duchess of Cambridge and the First Lady make a surprise visit to a Cornish nursery. But first, a British woman who was attacked by a crocodile in Mexico is out of a coma and doing much better, according to the twin who saved her life. Melissa Lorry had been badly injured and dragged underwater before sister Georgia punched the animal and pulled her to safety. Sangeeta Kandola has the latest on her condition.
Days after being dragged underwater and brutally bitten by a crocodile in Mexico, Melissa Lorry has woken up from a medically induced coma. Much to the relief of her twin sister Georgia, who is by her side and who saved her life.
Just wanted to let you know that I saw Mel earlier and she's doing really much better. She's doing really good. They took the tube out of her and she's been breathing on her own very well. But she can't talk because of the soreness in her throat from the tube.
The twins, who have been travelling and working with animals in Mexico since March, took a riverboat tour to swim in this lagoon near Puerto Escondido when the crocodile attacked, pulling Melissa underwater. Her twin Georgia then bravely grappled Melissa free from the grip of the reptile by repeatedly punching it in the face. Melissa now has sepsis from her wounds, but despite this, Georgia says she's doing well.
She recognised me, knew how I was, seemed happy to see me. Yeah, she's doing much better.
Back home in Berkshire, their sister Hannah has thanked those who've helped crowdfund more than £40,000 to cover the girls' medical costs.
thank you so much to absolutely everybody who's supported us, sent us love and sent us their hard-earned money. We now think we have enough, so we want to do the right thing and kind of just say thank you. We're going to see how we get on from here.
There are now question marks as to why the twins, who had used a tour guide allegedly recommended by their hostel, ended up in an unsafe swimming spot. Meanwhile, as Melissa continues to show signs of improvement, her family are preparing to fly out in the coming days. Sangeeta Kandola, ITV News.
The UK's economy grew by 2.3% in April as the reopening of shops and businesses drew customers back to the high street. Clothes stores have seen a 69% boost, while increased sales in cars and caravans have helped to drive the fastest monthly growth since July last year. A terminally ill campaigner who mounted a legal challenge to the ban on assisted dying in the UK has died at the age of 71. Noel Conway, who had motor neuron disease, died at home after making a decision to remove his ventilator with the support of his family and a local hospice. And 2 passengers on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean have tested positive for COVID. The pair, who didn't have symptoms, were travelling on the MSC Seaside cruise ship and disembarked with their families in Sicily on Tuesday. Now we're just a few hours away from the beginning of football's Euro 2020, a year late because of the pandemic, but that hasn't stalled the excitement for the home nations. It is the first major men's tournament for Scotland since 1998, while Wales are at their second Euros in a row. Preparations are well underway in Rome, where the tournament will kick off tonight with Italy versus Turkey. It concludes in a month's time with the final to be held at Wembley Stadium. Well, in a moment, we'll check in with England and Scotland, but let's start with Lucy Watson, who is there for Wales. And you're in Baku, Lucy, in Azerbaijan, and Wales the first of the home nations to play.
They are indeed, Lucrezia. Now, they have just finished their training session inside the Olympic Stadium behind me, and it's the first time that they've been able to test out the turf for themselves ahead of tomorrow's big game. Everyone was present and correct, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. Now, most importantly, the Red Army is also on its way. Although depleted in numbers, many did leave Cardiff Airport this morning, and they're expected here in Baku in the next couple of hours. So we're hoping to meet up with some of those a little bit later on. Now, at capacity, this stadium normally holds around 70,000 spectators, but because of COVID restrictions, it will barely be half full tomorrow. Nevertheless, it will be a huge game. Make no mistake, this is pivotal against the Swiss. Rob Page's men, Rob Page's tactics need to be right, but a little bit of luck wouldn't go amiss either.
Well, as Wales get their campaign underway, England will be heading here to Wembley, which will be where they're playing all their group games. As always, expectations for this England squad are pretty high, not least because this is in effect home Euros for them, but also because the last major tournament, the World Cup in Russia, Gareth Southgate steered them to a semi-final. Now, ironically, the team they're playing on Sunday and their opening game is Croatia, the team that beat them in that semi-final. So a chance for revenge there. Obviously, like everybody else, England will be hoping to get off to a winning start. But if they do, it will actually be a first. Surprisingly, England have never won their opening fixture in a Euros Championships. But this is a very young squad, the second youngest in the entire tournament, so they won't be held down by any baggage of previous failures. One last thing, England's teams usually pick themselves, not this time. Gareth Southgate has an awful lot of exciting attacking talent at his disposal, and that is a luxury that previous English managers have not had.
Well, Scotland have to wait the longest to get their campaign underway, but what's another couple of days? The Tartan Army have been waiting 23 years to return to a major finals. It was France of the World Cup in 1998, but now Scotland are back. Steve Clarke and his squad are in confident mood ahead of their Euro opener here at Hampden against the Czech Republic next week, and rightly so. They had a very good warm-up, a couple of matches against the Netherlands and Luxembourg. Steve Clarke has a clean bill of health, and he also has a squad now lit littered with talent, including Champions League winners like Billy Gilmore and Andy Robertson, and players playing at the very highest level across European football. The nation has taken this Scotland team to their hearts in recent weeks, and there is a sense between the Tartan Army and the country as a whole that Scotland could achieve something very special at this tournament. And come Monday, 2 p.m. here at Hampden Park, there will be a party 23 years in the making as Scotland kick off the Euros against the Czech Republic.
All right, Ronnie, Lucy and Steve, thank you. And you can follow all the highs and lows of the Euros on the ITV News website. And finally, we return to Cornwall and a rather special surprise for some young children at a nursery this lunchtime. A visit not just from a royal, the Duchess of Cambridge, but a First Lady too. It is the first of a number of events to be attended by the royal family. And our royal editor, Chris Shipp, of course, was there too. Chris, quite a moment to remember for those children.
Quite a moment, not just for the children actually, Lucrezia, but also for this whole village. I mean, welcome to Connor Downs. It is a small rural village on the outskirts of Hale in Cornwall. And as you say, not only a royal visit here this morning, but one from the First Lady of the United States, who went to that school behind me. The head teacher said of the two women who were visiting her school today, they are both passionate educators. And the reason that they were here was to focus on that early years education. Kate's done a lot of work in this area where the first 5 years of a child's life can have such a huge impact on the rest of their lives. But as you can well imagine, such a visit here was quite surprising to the villagers. In fact, the convoy, Flotuses, as she's called, First Lady of the United States, her convoy has just departed. It was 8 cars long, 4 times as long as the one that brought the Duchess of Cambridge here. And I should also tell you, Lucrezia, that in the course of the conversation there was a question that was put to Kate from one of the American reporters about her new niece, Lilibet, Harry and Meghan's new baby daughter. And Kate said, "I wish her the very best. I can't wait to meet her. We haven't met her yet. I hope that will be soon." So quite an eventful morning, it has to say, here in the village of Connor Downs.
Oh, yes, indeed. Chris, thank you. And that is it this lunchtime. Mary will have the ITV Evening News at 6:30 live from Cornwall. The news where you are follows the national weather. But for now, from everyone on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.